right? It's time that we start painting and drawing, and preferably not with the mouse, but with a tablet. If you have a tablet, you will notice that it is now sensitive to the pressure automatically by default. That is, you can disable that, and there's a couple of new icons up here. So you can turn this one off if you don't want the pressure to be used to control the size. Right, so you turn it on, that's the way it is by default, and you may need to do one brush stroke initially just to see that work. Some initialization, it depends a bit on the driver, on your tablets, and so on. There's a new icon over here, in fact, tablet options. Now that's not in the released version yet. This is going beyond some of the new features, and we'll be using this to test and to configure how harsh or how sensitive the tablet should be. So you can configure that, you can get some tablet info, and save that configuration and so on. So we'll get into that in a little bit later once this is actually released. But what I want to show you is the main control panel for your brushes. This is the settings. Now that's assuming you have selected the brush as the tool. In the tool panel here you can choose different tools, and no surprise there, right? And when you select the tool, whatever tool you choose, you'll see different options for it here at the top. So for instance, for the fill tool, you see opacity, tolerance, and so on. When you look at the linear tool, the curve, and some of the others, you'll see a variety of other tools. Well, when you are on the brush tool right here, you can not only can you right click on that and choose a number of predefined brushes, presets, such as for instance the large cover for oil, and let's go grab a green and do some green cover. Not only can you do that, but you do have also these additional options for brushes there at the top. Alright, so I'm going to choose, in fact you can grab those same presets right here, and I'm going to choose the large airbrush. That's the one we get by default, and I'm going to get one of the darker line colors. And so when I press very lightly, I want it to make a thin line, and you can set the sensitivity for that. In your control panel, usually when you go to your control panel, you should see some driver configuration options. Depending on what brand you have, you might find it under the name of tablet setting, like this one here. Maybe you'll find it something that's specific to your brand of tablet. So like there may be a pen and touch, although that's probably a Windows specific. I'm going to try this one here, the Wacom tablet properties, because right now I'm running on a Wacom Intuos 3, not the latest and greatest, but still really one of the greatest. A great tablet, and it not only recognizes the pressure but also the angle for the twist, and we are starting to use that as well now. So you can look at options here. You can, there's somewhere there where you can set the tilt sensitivity, current pressure. You can customize that. You can press harder, press fine, see if it's still capturing it, and so on. So you can make that basically the default configuration and just leave it like that, or you can have it apply for all applications. You can have it apply for a specific application. You can designate the behavior and configuration for different applications. But we'll just leave that for all and go back to the program here. And so now, if I didn't have that, it would do every line the same size, right? And that's with the regular brushes. That's also with custom brushes. If I enable custom brush transform, like for instance here with the hot dog, if I want to enable the tablet, so this settings here is the brush settings, and you have also a shortcut for that, O for options, brush options, of course. Tack it down here if you want to keep it in place, and then set the size. It doesn't do anything with the hot dog, because the hot dog is using a large image, and it's a custom brush. So you need to go to the custom brush transform and authorize the rescaling on the fly. The resizing is something on slow computer might take a little time. So now you have something that is pressure sensitive, and you see the size change based on how hard you're drawing there. So that works with custom brushes as well. And then main brushes that shapes-based internal brushes, of course. Those also. And there's not only the size that you can vary with that. Let's say you set the step distance a little bit higher. Let's put it to about 40. Because then we can see every image much better, right? So we can see them small, we can see them big, depending on how much pressure we apply. And not only can the size change, but you can also have the opacity change. You can have them change both at the same time. So when you press lightly, it's barely visible, and when you press harder, it becomes more opaque. And if you only want the opacity, you disable the size, or you toggle it on or off right here, right? And then so now you have the opacity at full size, and it's doing that. Now you can also change the rotation. Now this rotation here, it will do that also with the mouse, meaning it's registering which way you're drawing. So this is not a rotation of the pen or a tilt of the pen. This is the path. This is following the path that you're drawing, and so the stars are lining up and changing the angle based on that. And so, for instance, if you didn't have the angle, they will look like this. The stars would keep their orientation, whereas here you can see them line up into the path. All right, so that's an interesting feature too. There are a couple of other things. In fact, in particular for this one here, sometimes it's very sensitive to sudden changes, and especially if you have very large. Let's take a large custom brush. In fact, let's draw one like this, or maybe something like this. Okay, and we'll pick this up as a custom brush. So here's a nice tool, the custom brush pickup tool. I think we have B for shortcut on that one as well. B for brush, because it's very brush centric. And I'm going to custom brush. I'm going to pick this up as a custom brush, right? And then the preview, PRV, will show me what the custom brush looks like. And I can stamp it down, or I can drag it around. And as I'm doing that, maybe I want it to rotate around like this here. And you can see it's very sensitive now, right? Why is it so sensitive? Well, because every time that I move from one to the next position, it sees a slightly different angle, and it lines up in that. So in order to make that a little bit smoother, there's this option here, apply smoothing to the point of motion, right? So when you click that, it will do something. I don't know if it's a spline interpolation, but it will make it it will tame it a little bit, and it won't be so hyper reactive, right? And so that makes for much smoother, much nicer use of that type of brush. All right, let's make this brush a little bit smaller. Let's go to the brush menu, and remember we have a store option here, so you can store that, and you can see it against the flat pattern, and then perhaps reduce the size a little bit. And that would be, for instance, here. There you go. So now we have a slightly smaller one. Now maybe we want it to be a different color, so that would be under the hue. We can change the hue, maybe to a reddish appearance, and then we can change it to light blue, and so on. So you can change the hue without having to recreate this brush. This is what we call store and manage, right? This is not just storing the brush, this is storing and managing it as well. So you can actually manage and do a lot of things to it without having to lose the original, without having to recreate a new. And it just derives it builds it from that stored image. And you can always go back to the original, right? You can do a restore and recreate the original brush, and then there you are, right? And then even though it shows here hue of -139 green, it still uses the original. It still had it in memory, so you can go back to that original size. You can give it back the original size as you have here, or make it even bigger. All sorts of different ways to use that. All right, so custom brushes, a brush class in their own rights. And one thing that you can also see is that now, even without using the rotation by the path, right now I'm not using the rotation by the path. For this type of brush, let's say we create something like this here. I'm going to go create a fairly large custom brush with a cell density that shows. Right, so you see these cells, and I want these to line up, so I'm going to hold my tablet at the very end. It's a little bit easier that way to twist around. It's not easy to see. Actually, maybe I'll do that in this custom brush. the bristle brushes, right? In the bristle brushes, there's a certain preset of bristle brushes. Let's go and set the size to maybe 200 or 300, and that didn't quite go there. Let's go bristles. Oh, we have 0 bristles. Let's give it I don't know, 123 bristles. Okay, so now these bristles, they will actually rotate based on a variety of parameters. Let's make sure the opacity is full. Let's grab one of those presets, and there you go. Yeah, so these bristles also change. See, if I'm rotating my tilting the orientation of my tablet, I don't know if you can see that, it's rotating the bristles, and it's kind of creating a circular motion around it. And so it's not only pressure sensitive in some cases, depending on which tablet model you have. It can also be using the angle, the I don't know if they call it a tilt or the spin or the orientation. It's using some angular information that the pen gives you from the tablet. There's a variety of other settings we could use. There you see it. That's better. That way we can see it a little bit more. Look at that. See how it's rotating? I think it's not the spin of my... Yeah, it's not spinning it around the axis. It's what you need to do is have it turn the angle oriented. So you have it point. Basically, you have the tablet initially straight down. You have the pen straight down, and then you lie it down as if you were going to lay it down on the side, and then but maybe you have it still at 20-degree angle, and then you point it in different directions, and that makes it rotate. So it's a rotation around the vertical axis of the tablet surface. And so that sort of behavior is something you can use to create, out of your wrist. If you draw with your wrist, if you make an arc out of your wrist, rather than something like this, right? It will do a rotation of the bristle images, and I believe we have that added in a couple of other places too. Now I'm just not quite sure yet where. Haven't played with that too much. Let's disable this and go back to this. Yeah, see, that doesn't rotate it. But that is something you can have happen when you do the tablet rotation here, and even nicer when you smooth it. All right, so there's that. There's the bristles. In fact, let's go back out of the particle brushes. Let's stay in the regular brush set. Let's explore some of these other settings here. So we have, let's go back to one of my favorite, the hot dog. All right, so here's a custom brush, and it is based on an image that's not totally symmetrical, because you have this little white hotspot or highlight in the middle. Not in the middle, it's a little bit to the upper left, and that gives it a nice little 3D look. When you look at a few other things you can do with that, you see we'll skip this one, we saw that already, but here is the Symmetry Tool. So the Symmetry Tool allows you to clear not the image, but clear the symmetry mode, and there's a couple of symmetry modes available. You have the horizontal symmetry. So as you're drawing, you see this vertical line here, right? As you're drawing, it's drawing it also on the other side. Now this is drawing it rather than just replicating it, which means that if you really look what's going on the right side, which is where you're drawing, the image on the left is not totally identical, because the way it does it is it draws the right side, and as I'm drawing, it's letting go for a split second, and it draws a few to the left, and then it draws back to the right and continues my path, and then draws a few to the left. Now if there's no random position offset, it looks very much the same. But look at this, if I'm going here to add some random positioning, right? Something like this. Well, now there is a random position where I'm drawing, and another random, it's random, so another sort of position offset on the left side. And what that does essentially is it gives it a different appearance, a slightly different appearance. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to see. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. I've noticed, for instance, when you use smearing modes, let's go grab some of those smearing modes. Where do we have smearing modes? Right there. Oils, totally oil, right? Something like this. That looks a little bit different, but not different enough. Let's give it a little bit more random position here. Something like this. Okay, so now you see here, this area here and this area here clearly are not identical. So even though this was painted with symmetrical mode, it's not exactly a pure symmetry or a pure duplicate copy, right? You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit different on each side. And that's because of the randomization and the fact that it's actually not just taking the right half and copying it over. It's actually drawing it on the left side as well. So back and forth, back and forth. As I'm drawing my stuff on the right side, it's also drawing to the left side. And then so with that, you have the ability to create some pretty impressive drawings that look kind of symmetrical, but not perfect symmetry. They're a little bit different on the left and the right side. You see this different patches here than we have over here, right? All right, so that's the symmetry mode, and there's a couple of others. We can do the vertical at the same time. So there you just draw in the upper right corner, right? And it will do everything. Let's go back to my hot dog. So as you draw that, now if you draw in the lower part or in this part or in this part, it does the same thing, right? It mirrors along it does a symmetrical painting on all of these. Let's go back to another smear mode, effects, modeling clay, right? That's another good one to use to see that it's not a total copy, but it's actually symmetrically painting. There's another way to go there, and that's the Kaleidoscope even further. So let me clear this and go to the Kaleidoscope, and then here you can do perhaps 6 by 6 all the way up to 10. Let's go to 10. So now here it's drawing along 10 paths all at the same time. Let's go back to my hot dog. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Where is it here? The size. And again, for that to work, you want to make sure you check the custom brush transform, allow custom brush transform, so it actually is able to change the size based on tablet, based on other parameters. Like if you reduce the size here, you want to make sure it's actually authorizing that. All right, so here's really an interesting way to use that, right? And that's the symmetry. And then there is one more, which is the mirror mode. Now, but when you're doing this here, the symmetry or the Kaleidoscope, you want to be able to set the center. You want to be able to set the symmetry axis and so on. So that's what set center is for. So you can set it, and you can say, yeah, let's go symmetry around this, and then set center to a different place. Let's set it right here, something like that. And of course you can also use all sorts of filters with that to do other effects, like for instance the twirl filter effect here somewhere, this one here, right? With that you can go and grab the hand and then move it somewhere and apply a factor of twirling one way or the other. So lots of really fun stuff you can do with that. But we'll get back to filters a little bit later. So one more thing I'd like to do is to make this a mirror. So different between symmetry is that symmetry is actually drawing it, whereas mirror is just doing a mirror copy of what it already has. And so if I'm doing a mirror copy, the right half is taken and flipped over to the left side, and you see this as a perfect symmetry now, perfect mirror. Vertical mirror can be combined at the same time. And so now you can also still paint, and immediately it goes and creates a mirror copy, right? Let's go and do a mirror copy just vertical. So what you're drawing here is immediately copied or mirrored down to the bottom side as well. And let's say one more thing. Let's do actually just let's clear that and do just the vertical mirror. All right, so this one, oops, hold on, not vertical, I want to do horizontal. So horizontal mirror, and without the vertical mirror, turn this off. So now we have just a horizontal mirror, meaning it's got a vertical line and it mirrors it horizontally left to right, or right to left. I'm drawing on the right side it shows it to the left. If I'm drawing here, nothing shows. Okay, so when you have a vertical mirror, or excuse me, a horizontal mirror against the vertical line, you need to be on the right side. And if you are drawing, if you're mirroring vertically, this way here, and I mean only this way, then you have the vertical mirror, and that's against this horizontal center line. You have to draw on the top part, right? If you draw on the bottom part, nothing shows in that case. So here you go. That's the mirror mode, and I'm going to go back to, actually this time I'm going to use both there. So one thing I want to do is just do some dabbles here. Since I have both the horizontal and the vertical mirror enabled, I'm going to stay in my upper right quadrant, right? So I'm above and I'm to the right, which is in the upper right quadrant. And so let's say I'm doing all sorts of dabbles here, and now I'd like to really animate this, all right? So this mirror thing is something you can actually animate. Let me show you how. I'm going to create an animation, and I'm going to say let's do 100 or 234 frames, nice and smooth. Right, and I'd like not to start with this image. I'd like to actually paint. Well, let's see, what do we want to do? Let's go and let's do a image transform where we gradually zoom in. Okay, so we would go to the transform. There it is, image transform, and then along the animation here. Okay, let's look at this a little bit more granular way. We have the left edge, and I'm going to keep it exactly at this angle initially. Let's go and set a keyframe. Where is that? Right here, keyframe plus. Add a keyframe. And then I'm going to change it so that I can scale it down, but also rotate it a little bit. There, maybe to 90 degrees. Almost there, exactly 90 degrees. And I'm going to keyframe that. So you see some parameters now are changing, and now I'm going to zoom in all the way to here, and I'm continuing to rotate to 180 degrees. Right, now all here it's fine, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to enable, I still have enabled the mirror, so it should apply the mirror on the fly. Right, now here we still have some room for some other transformation. Let's finish this rotation like so. Keyframe that. Alright, so let's go render that, apply. And by the way, you have the save undos checked just in case it didn't come out the way you wanted. Make sure this one is checked so you can undo it. Right? I mean, if you're feeling adventurous and you know exactly what you're doing, then you don't need that. But initially, as you're experimenting and exploring and learning, I encourage you to save undo, to have that enabled so that you can actually undo it later on. Alright, so we have seen this animation occur, but it didn't actually, well, now here as I'm scrubbing through it, it is applying the mirror on the fly. But the original doesn't have it. So if I go anywhere here, it may not have it yet until I look at it. So, but if I play it, I may see parts where it's like twitching, right? Because it's not done the mirror application yet. Here it does, here it doesn't, here it does again. And then so this is very noisy. And what you want to do is make sure it applies the mirror over the entire frame sequence evenly. This is really easily done here. You go with the filter. It's an animated filter. And there's an option called apply mirror all the way at the bottom. I don't think you can see this in this screen capture. It's one of the last items, apply mirror. And so it just goes through the entire sequence and applies the mirror all over. And so now you have a very nice and smooth animation. Let's go finish that off, and there you go.